Panelists, we pass this along? Okay, great. So long as we know what we're doing. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here this afternoon. This is the inaugural event for the Institute for Science, Society and Policy of 2019, and it's very fitting in a number of ways. First, I think, is that the event is focusing on science advice. The last number of years, the last few years running, we've had our inaugural events focusing on science advice, past, present, future, golden age, a variety of different thematics, and some of you in this room have actually participated in those panels. So very delighted to continue that. It's a bit too early to call it a tradition, but to continue that approach. The second of which, reason that it's very fitting, is that we're doing it in collaboration. That's one of the things that I think the Institute does extraordinarily well. Down, up, down.
Oh, sorry. We're trying to reset the hand behind you. Test.
I felt like Toby a moment ago. It sounded like he was moving something to the left, to the right.
Yeah.
We're okay for now, though, for me? All right. The second reason that, as I mentioned, that it's really fitting for us is that this is being done in collaboration with the Institute on Governance. Now I've got 3 mics, so nobody can possibly not hear what I'm saying. Are we good? Is this about right? Right, left, up, down? Okay. And it's a tremendous opportunity for us to work with the Institute on Governance on this event. It's been a real pleasure to do so. For those who don't know very much about the Institute for Science, Society and Policy, we're a cross-faculty institute at the University of Ottawa. We look at the intersections between science, society, and policy. We have 3 core areas of expertise and interest. The first of which is science for policy, so aka evidence-based or evidence-informed decision-making. The second of which is policies for science, technology, and innovation. And the third of which is governance of emerging technologies. And I think all of those things will be represented in some fashion here this evening. The third reason that I'd like to point out that this is a very fitting event for us to start 2019 is that it's a book launch for 2 of our senior fellows. So where'd Toby go? Is he still around? Okay, so while Jeff didn't work on it on Toby's dime, he worked it on our dime. But we don't pay Jeff anything. So it's actually cost effective. So we're delighted to be able to support this book launch for both Jeff and Paul. And this, as Jeff mentioned, has been a book a while in the making, and we're so pleased that it's come to fruition in this way. I'd also like to just very briefly recognize the tremendous contribution of Engineering books to many very salient questions in the governance, public administration, and public policy space. It's wonderful to have Ruth here, and it saddens me greatly to not have Gilles Paquette here, who was a very dear friend and who contributed just tremendously to both our economic, administrative, political, and on lives. He will be dearly missed. So I'm here really just to kind of play traffic cop. I'm going to introduce each of our panelists. A couple of just quick notes before we get started. The first of which is to say that everybody is speaking in their personal perspective, so they're not here to represent a particular organization. I think that's important to point out. I think that the second of which is really to note that the scope of the panel. Would we have had a full day? We would have had a variety of other representatives on the panel. For example, somebody to bring an Indigenous perspective and different ways of knowing to science advice and to science decision making. So that's an area that we won't necessarily be dealing with frontally, but we recognize the importance of that. And I think the third point that I would note is that while it is an election year, we're not really putting our panelists on the hot seat around some of those issues. That said, in the spirit of Gilles Paquette, who was very much un agent provocateur. I don't think I've been a better agent provocateur in my life. I would encourage our panelists to be provocative in their remarks. So each of our panelists will be providing us with about 5 minutes or so of their perspective on the past, present, and future of science advice in Canada. We'll go at that point to a bit of a moderated discussion, and then given the tremendous expertise in this room, we're going to throw it as quickly as we can to audience Q&A. And then Paul is going to wrap things up for us close to 6:30. We will be proceeding in the order from your left to right. So that has us beginning with Christiane Allen, who is a science policy specialist at the Office of the Chief Science Advisor. Many of you would know Christiane for her work internationally, one of the key figures in the creation and the management and the piloting of INGSA, the International Network for Government Science Advice, and also, of course, for her role as formerly Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor in New Zealand. So Christiane is really going to be kind of bringing a global perspective to this discussion this evening, looking at the evolution of the discourse at the global level and how countries are responding to that. So, Christiane, take it away.